meant to do that. Good morning. Welcome to day 2 or Wednesday, whatever day it is. Welcome to Comparative Cultures 12. Yesterday, if you'll recall, we didn't do too much. We kind of talked about the syllabus and what the class would look like and how it would operate and the fact that I was live streaming this and all that. So I think we're all pretty comfortable with that at the moment, or at least we kind of know where we are. And so we can start doing some real stuff, right? Okay, let's do that. Oh, I'm going to say hello to some people here. Adon is here. Good morning to you, sir. And Ivan is here. Good morning, Ivan. Yes. Now, this is obviously comparative cultures, and so step 1 is understanding what culture is. And so that's kind of what we'll be doing today, is talking a little bit about what culture is, how we can understand it, and how it works. But first, I have a question for you. And my question is this. How would you, if I asked you, and I am, how would you describe a human? So imagine that I am an alien. I have just come down from outer space. Thank you. Thank you. I've just come down from outer space. I've looked around this planet. I've never been to this planet before. It's very different from my planet. And I see that there are there's life. There's all kinds of living creatures here. So there's some green things outside, and there's things flying in the air and swimming in the water, and some living things are large and some of them are small, and it's a very interesting planet. And then there's you guys, and you seem to be a very strange type of animal. You seem to have remodeled the face of the planet. You've created all of these non-natural structures, and you live in these structures, and you move yourself around with all kinds of different things. I think we could agree you're quite different from a lot of the other living things on the planet. And so what are you guys? What are humans? What makes them so different from other forms of life on this planet? Explain it to me, because I'm an alien and I don't know. You have a brain. Yes, you do have a brain you can use, although I would say that that's probably similar to many other creatures, although not all. Not all creatures have a brain, but it's true, you have a brain. Ooh, you can speak. So, and what do you use to speak? Languages. Okay, so you creatures, you humans, if I can call you that, you humans, you communicate with each other through language, right? And you have a bunch of different kinds, right? There's not just one type of language. There's a bunch of different kinds, and people who don't speak the same language can't understand each other. Interesting. What else? You what?
We're more sentient.
You are, well, yeah, you're sentient. What does that mean?
Like we can feel or like perceive things.
You can feel and perceive things. Okay.
We have thoughts.
You have thoughts. Yeah, I want to press pause. Can somebody Google sentient for me? I feel like there's more to it than that. Because I have a cat, and my cat can feel and perceive things too. She's actually very perceptive. But is she sentient?
We have flesh, we have bones.
You do?
We combine the flesh and bones and the blood.
Okay.
That's how we live, we eat. Sometimes we are predators.
Okay.
We are huge predators.
What's it say there, Sophie?
It literally says what I said.
Does it literally say what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. So to be able to perceive and to feel?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are sentient beings. We perceive and feel things. We're animals that are made up of bones and flesh and blood, right? We consume things in order to fuel our bodies and to rebuild them. Sometimes we are predators and we eat other things. Sometimes if we're unlucky and we wander off into the wilderness, we become food for other animals. What else?
We are self-aware.
Oh yeah, we're self. That's kind of what I was thinking about with sentient, but I guess it's not part of the definition. We are self-aware. What does that kind of mean to you, Mulder?
So we know that we're humans, and like we know what we're doing. Unlike, let's say, a cat, it doesn't know it's a cat. It eats and it does what a cat does, but it doesn't know that it's a cat.
Yeah, we have self. We are awareness of ourselves, right? We know that we are a thing. We have an identity, and we know that we are distinct from other things, and we can compare ourselves to those other things, right? We understand that we are selves. We have a self.
We make decisions.
Yeah, we're decision makers. How do we make those decisions?
We think. What do
We think sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes I think more often we think after we decided, and then we're like, how can I justify that decision now? But yeah, you're right. Sometimes we think before or after decisions, or both. What else?
Mostly we live in big gatherings. We make our own people.
Yeah, we're social creatures, right? We don't wander off into the mountains alone. While some of us weird humans do, but most of us live in groups, right? In groups with other people.
That's what make a culture.
Yeah, and we make a culture from that, and we'll get to culture in a second. Well, I guess we have culture is something that makes us very different from other creatures, right? That actually don't have that. What else makes us different?
We invent.
Yeah, and what do we invent?
Through the eras we have invented like many things.
Yeah.
Approaching new billions. Some things.
Yeah, we invent things, right? We create tools and technology that helps us to kind of survive and interact with the world, right? I'll take a little pause to mention that in kind of anthropological or archaeological terms, basically everything is technology, okay? Technology, also technology. All of these things are tech, right? So in modern society, we think of tech like phones and stuff, right? But to an anthropologist, technology is anything that humans create to use for a purpose. So it's a much broader definition. That water bottle is technology, all of this stuff, okay? What else? Adon here says, I'm going to throw this up here because I missed it before, but we're organized beings. Okay, so we create an order for ourselves, right? We operate within some sort of organizational structure usually, right? What kind of organizational structures do we operate within? In what ways do we organize ourselves?
Sometimes
Our time with groups.
Our what?
Our time.
Our time?
We organize our time.
Oh yeah, okay, so we organize our time.
we get organized by meeting other people, making a group.
Okay, well, yeah, we have different groups, right? Would you, sorry?
Even law is organized.
Even law?
Yeah, because there's like each state and
Okay, so, yeah. So we have these kind of organizational structures, right? We have time that's organized. We have groups of people that are organized.
Laws to follow.
We have laws and rules, right? We make up rules and then we follow them. Does any other creature do that? Not many. Not many. I think most creatures probably just do whatever they want, right? My cat has no rules. I can tell you that. Although she does know what she's not supposed to do, but yeah, she has no rules. But we actually create rules for ourselves, and then we follow them, usually. Man, we're weird creatures. What about what's weird about our bodies in comparison to other animals?
The hairstyles are bigger.
Okay, well, we're certainly bigger than
Most of them.
yeah. In terms of like if you looked at all the species, yeah, we're certainly bigger than most species. Definitely not the biggest one.
We walk on 2 legs.
Yeah, that's weird, right? That's weird. How many animals walk on 2 legs on this planet?
All birds.
What's that?
All birds.
Yes.
All what they have.
They kind of. I think they kind of fly more often than they walk. They can kind of waddle around. What else walks on 2 feet?
Apes.
Apes sometimes for short periods. What else?
Bears.
Bears can
Train dog.
toddle. Yeah, if you some quadrupeds, 4-footed things. Sometimes they can walk bipedally for short distances. But I mean things that get around like that all the time. Not much, right? Ostrich, penguins. I think they swim more often, but they can kind of.
Like we can define us as like the only creature that walks that uses half of their limbs. Because most, as we say, like birds walk on 2, but that's all what they have.
Yeah. Yeah, but we're kind of habitual bipeds, if you will. We get around on our 2 feet basically all the time, right? And that's pretty weird, right? For a creature on Earth to walk on 2 feet, weird. Not many of them do that, right? Most of them fly or swim or have 4 feet or more. Ugh. Right? most of them walk on multiple feet, but we do not. Adon, I wanted to, before I forget here, we have goals. We have futuristic goals. That's weird.
And we make
And we make,
wars.
yeah, we fight with each other in an organized fashion, sometimes according to rules, right? But the futuristic goals thing is interesting because if you have goals for the future, whatever they might be, what does that require you to do first?
Work hard.
Yes, but I mean, like, in terms of brain function, what must you be able to do?
Think about the future.
Yeah, yeah. You have to be able to imagine the future. You have to be able to project yourself into the future 5, 10, 20 years, whatever it is, and imagine what that might be like. Can you all do that? You can all kind of imagine what your life might be like in 10 years. You'll probably be wrong, but you can imagine it. Can any other animal do that? No, that's wild. That's a wild capability that humans have, the ability to imagine and project themselves into the future, the ability to kind of run different scenarios, right? What if I go to UBC? What if I go to BCIT? What if I drop out right now and become an artist, right? We can imagine different scenarios. We can imagine different futures. Other animals can't do that. That's an incredible capability. What else? Anything else? That makes, how else would you describe humans? So we walk around on 2 feet, we organize ourselves, we live in groups, we make technology to kind of help us live our lives. We're not the biggest creature on the planet, but we're probably bigger than most. We have a brain, we communicate with each other through language, we organize ourselves through culture. We have a brain that can do things that other animals really can't, right? Communicating with language, not a common capability for most creatures. A lot of creatures communicate through sounds they make, but they don't have language, right? We have a brain that can allow us to invent things and use tools. Not a lot of animals can do that. We have a brain that can imagine different scenarios and think about the future and be aware of ourselves. Super bizarre. No animal can do that, right? So we're really, really interesting and kind of strange creatures, are we not? The other thing we mentioned is that humans modify our environment, right? And we modify it to the point where we might actually destroy it and cause the extinction of ourselves, which would be also a very strange thing for a creature to do, but we might actually wind up doing that too. So we're weird animals, right? And the reason that I ask you this question, how would you describe a human, is because it is basically the main question that anthropology seeks to answer. So there's lots of anthropologists working around the world, and what anthropology is the study of human beings. And so anthro is I believe a Greek word or prefix for man. Logos is a Greek word for like the way or the manner of, right? So anthropology is the way in which humans are and what they do. So anthropology is all about answering that question. How do you describe a human? What is a human being? What does it mean to be a human? That's what anthropology seeks to answer. So anthropology then is the study of humans in all times and all places. And so anthropologists try to understand humans as biological beings. And so we talked about that in terms of their flesh and blood and bones and their brains and things like that. So anthropology wants to know about humans as organisms, as biological organisms, but also as social and cultural beings, which you might argue is kind of the most important part of being human, because I think that's where we're the most different from other creatures, right? Are there lots of other creatures that have flesh and bone and blood and brains that eat food and sometimes eat things and sometimes get eaten? Yeah, tons of other animals like that. But in terms of our social abilities and our cultural abilities, that's where we're really different, right? That's where we set ourselves apart from most other creatures. FYI, we're talking about this because it's important, but also this is originally what I was doing in university as I was doing anthropology. So I have a BA in anthropology and an MA in anthropology and half of a PhD in it. So not that counts for anything, but yeah, so I was very interested in this stuff, so I'm, just so you know, part of the reason we're talking about it is because it's important and it's applicable, but also because I think it's cool. Most of the anthropology departments you go to in around the country or around the world will kind of be divided into 4 subfields, because if you think about the study of all humans in all times and all places and every aspect of humanity, it's kind of a lot to study, right? That's ridiculous. That's a huge amount to study. And so anthropologists tend to kind of specialize themselves out into these 4 fields: biological or physical anthropology, social or cultural or sociocultural anthropology, archaeology, and linguistic anthropology. So, like I said, the biological anthropologists are interested in the study of humans as biological organisms. And so this might take the form of looking at human evolution, right? And so how, not the question of how are we different, but how did we get to be different, right? If we're such weird creatures, and we really are in some ways, if we're such weird creatures, how did we get to be weird? How did we get to be the creature that we are? And biological anthropologists, or paleoanthropologists as they're called, paleo is the prefix for old, they try to figure out how we became this type of animal, how we evolved into the creature that we are. And so I think this is really interesting stuff. In the anthropology course I teach, I spend a lot of time on it just because it's so cool. It's a very interesting story, but yeah, these are different species of apes, basically, that came before us, and all of them walked on 2 feet, just like we do. And so some of them have similarities to us, some of them have some pretty big differences, some of them may be our ancestors, some of them maybe not so much, but it's a very interesting story of how we've kind of become the creatures that we are. And again, we're not the first bipedal primate, because we are primates and we are apes. Sorry, you're all apes. I'm an ape too. But we're not the first bipedal ape to walk this planet. We may be the last. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, it's a very interesting story of how we've become what we are. And paleoanthropologists or biological anthropologists are interested in that story. Some biological anthropologists are primatologists, and so they try to understand us by looking at our closest relatives. And so here, do you know who this woman is? This is a rather famous scientist and primatologist named Jane Goodall. And Jane has been studying chimpanzees for her entire professional life. And so I think she went to Africa and started studying chimpanzees in the 1970s and wrote books on them and lived with them in the forest, taking notes on them. As I say, she's published books. Currently, she's more of an environmental activist, although she's kind of in her later years. She might be in her 70s at this point. So this is an older picture of her with this cute little, isn't he cute? Can you see him? Yeah, a little bit. He's pretty cute. But she looks at these creatures not only as animals in their own right, but also to help us understand who we are. Chimpanzees share about 98% of their DNA with us. So they are basically the most similar living thing on the planet to us that is not us. And so 98% of their DNA is what we have. I guess the 2% creates a big difference, right? But yeah, so primatologists will study other primates for their own sake, but also to kind of inform us about what we are, right? If we are a primate, if we are an ape, what are apes like, right? Because we're one variety of ape. Sorry, you're all apes. Me too.
Do you think that like it could all happen again, like evolution? Because you know how like some people teach them like sign language and stuff?
Yeah?
Do you think like maybe like in a few centuries it could repeat itself?
Well, repeat itself as in, will these guys turn into us?
Yeah, or like a different version.
Or we develop like as all what most people say, we were apes, and we have developed and evolved. We must develop into another thing, right?
Well,
These billion years.
that's a good
Must
question. That's a good question.
Or we are wrong. We're not apes.
That's a good question. Well, science currently defines us as apes, okay? And so we are in a family of primates, a bigger family of primates, and a smaller family of great apes, and an even smaller family of hominids. We won't get into that, but one of the misconceptions about evolution, there's two misconceptions. One is that these guys here, these little chimpanzees, they're not behind us on the evolutionary scale. And so sometimes you'll see like a picture, and sometimes it's a meme of, it's like a chimpanzee, and then there's kind of a more upright, furry human, and another one, and eventually you get to a full human. It's kind of not like that. So if you look at our family tree, these chimpanzees and other ones, gorillas, orangutans, all these other apes, they're not behind us on the family tree. They're actually beside us. So this chimpanzee is the result of millions of years of evolution, just like we are. And it's very well adapted to its environment. It's very well adapted to where it lives, and it's very successful if humans don't cut down on the forests around it. But if it's allowed to live, it's a very successful, well-adapted species. And so are we a pretty complex form of ape? Absolutely we are. But it doesn't make them really any less than we are. They're very well adapted to the environment that has shaped them, as are we. But we've been shaped by a different environment and by a different set of circumstances. In another 10,000 years, will apes be different and will we be different? Maybe. It depends on environmental selection. It depends what the environment wants, right? And so nobody really knows where evolution is going, and nobody really knows where it's going to end up. It's we don't have time to get into it now, but it's a process that relies on a lot of kind of random chance. And so you never really know what's going to happen. The short version, I guess, of this is that every time you have a new person or a new organism that's born, every new organism that's born is genetically unique, right? So you've seen the crows outside, right? The big black birds, they're about this big. They all look the same to me. One crow looks the same as the next one, but they're all genetically unique, right? And so nature is constantly creating new combinations of genes, new types of organism, and to see if they will be more successful than others. And so depending on how the environment changes and depending on what types of genes appear and what types of adaptations appear, that's what dictates how evolution goes. And so it's a process that has a lot of randomization involved. And so I like to imagine it as, have you ever been like taking a test, maybe like a written test, and the teacher asks a question that you have no idea, and so you just write like everything you possibly know, hoping something's right? Yeah. That's kind of how evolution works, right? So animals are constantly just throwing out every answer they possibly can in the hopes that the environment will select them and that they'll be successful. And so nobody really knows where it's going. The fact that we are who we are and what we are is pretty surprising. It's not a predictable result. And if you look back at our ancestors, if you go back 3 million years to the first primates that are walking around on 2 feet in Africa, they are not the species that you wouldn't bet on them to become masters of the planet. I guarantee you. They were not that bright. They were not particularly fast. They weren't fast runners. They didn't have claws or big teeth or anything. They didn't know how to use fire. They didn't know how to build tools. The fact that they have become what we are.
How they live?
Good question.
There must be something like other than that, right?
Well, that's
Now we are like we eat other animals, right?
Yes.
There must be like something different than them, which are animals, which is mostly like as known through all the eras, like past eras. Mostly they fed on sheep and cows, right? And they have never
Eventually.
changed, right?
Eventually we do.
Eventually.
But for a long time, sheep and cows as we know them don't exist. In a way, modern sheep and cows they're a creation of man as well, because we've bred them to be a certain way.
How? So what were they before they became sheep and cows?
I don't know about sheep. Cows, domestic cows come from an animal called an aurochs, which is extinct now. They basically look like a big cow. They're really big, but they don't exist anymore. Only what we've bred them into, which is domestic cows. But I'm talking like millions of years ago. We don't, our ancestors didn't hunt yet because they didn't have the technology to do it. Again, they were really slow. We still are slow, right? Even our fastest runners. Who's our fastest runner now? Is Usain Bolt still? Yeah, still fast. In animal terms, he's slow. Any predator can catch him. A lion, a tiger, a bear. Yeah, they'll take down Usain Bolt pretty quick.
So what were they? How they lived?
That's a great
How
that's
our ancestors lived.
that's a great question, and it's still one that's not entirely answered.
So we can't confirm everything that's behind it.
No. It's we don't have time to get into this now, but it's a very long story. It's a story that takes millions of years to unfold, and we we don't have evidence from kind of every single period, and so we're still piecing it together. And it's very difficult to do, but it's, you know, they did survive, but it couldn't have been easy, and it wasn't. Again, if you went back in a time machine 3 million years and you looked at some of these early bipedal primates, you would look at them and you'd say, they've got no shot. They're going to get eaten. And a lot of them did. But somehow, here we are. It's an interesting story that we do not have time for, but I'm very tempted to talk more about it because I don't know, I think it's really interesting. Oh, one more thing. Biological anthropologists are also interested in DNA, study of DNA, because that's a biological part of humans. And one of the things that they've been able to do, not recently, but in the past, is use what's called mitochondrial DNA to estimate the distance between when populations moved or separated out. And so the current idea, although that might be challenged in the near future, but the current idea is that us, humans, we evolved in Africa. And at a certain time in history, we start to migrate out and start to spread over the entire world as we have. And looking at mitochondrial DNA, you can actually tell when certain populations migrated from Africa and moved to different parts of the world. And so that's something that biological anthropologists are interested in and have worked on in the past. Archaeology is kind of my favorite too, because that's kind of what I used to do. Archaeology studies human behavior, but in the past. And so how do you study behavior in the past? Well, you look at what people left behind, right? And so archaeologists often work in situations like this, where they dig into the ground and try to find things that people left behind. What kind of things do you think archaeologists might uncover when they start working?
Old tools.
Mm-hmm. Old tools. What's that?
Bones.
Old bones, right? Theirs, or maybe things that they ate. Right.
Hunting tools.
What's that?
Hunting tools.
Hunting tools, right? What else?
Money?
What's that? Can't hear yet. Money? Sure. Yeah. If you're dealing with a time period where currency exists, yeah, you can find money. What else might archaeologists find?
Cups or plates.
Sure. Cups, plates, things people eat with.
Clothes.
What's that?
Clothes.
Sometimes, if you're really lucky, clothes don't tend to preserve very well in the archaeological record, as they say. But if you're really lucky, you can find them, and sometimes you do.
Cities?
What's that?
Cities.
Cities, yeah. Structures that people have built. Buildings, roads, wells, ditches, canals. Yeah. Treasure, right, which is always fun, and you know, every movie archaeologist is not interested in hunting tools, they're interested in treasure, right? I'm looking at you, Indiana Jones and Lara Croft, and what's that?
Tom Raider, I think.
Yeah, and who's the guy from The Mummy? Rick O'Connell, right? Yeah, so archaeologists might find all of those things. To burst your bubble, most of what archaeology is basically winds up to be looking through people's garbage. Most of what people leave behind is junk, right? Broken hunting tools. Oh, I broke my arrowhead, right?
Do they look for human bones?
What's that?
Do they look for human bones?
Yes, and I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, people eat things, right? And then there's garbage from those, right? If you eat shellfish, shells, right? If you eat a fish, scales, right? Or bones, and bones. If you eat a mammal, there's bones, right? So humans usually create garbage in some way. Broken tools, broken pots, the leftovers of animals, those all go in the garbage pit. And then archaeologists dig them up. And it doesn't sound very exciting, and in some ways it's not. But if you think about it, you could probably learn a lot from someone's garbage, right? If someone kept all of your garbage and looked through it, could they tell something about how you lived? Yeah, they'd probably know an uncomfortable amount about you, right? Probably more than you would want them to know. So again, it can be very, you can actually learn a lot from looking through people's garbage. But like Basil mentioned, you can also learn a lot from examining their bones, right? So here we have some students working on a human burial, and you can see there's two kind of young people here. I think there's actually three. Yeah, so it looks like there's an adult kind of at the top, and then it looks like there's two children here, and then there's a little baby right there. Can you see the little baby? Yeah.
But didn't they get dissolved?
It depends. Human bone can preserve very well. It depends on what the soil around it is like. So if you have very acidic soil, that's not good. It'll actually eat away the bones. If you have very alkaline or basic soil, it's actually much better, and the bones can actually preserve really well. So it always depends on the context, the environment, and the same thing with clothes, Sophie. Sometimes you can get an environment that preserves the clothes really well, but then sometimes they just.
What about Egypt?
Yeah, well, Egypt is good for preserving things because it's so dry. And often you find that in archaeological context, it's the extremes that preserve things really well. So if it's really dry and really hot, that works well. If it's really cold and really dry, that works well too. If it's really, really wet, like if it's a bog or if it's underwater, sometimes that works well too. And so sometimes in these extreme environments, you get really good preservation. But Egypt is a good one because it's so dry that, people's bodies dry out before they decompose. Of course, the Egyptians helped that along, but we'll get to that a little bit later. What else do you think you could learn from a burial like this? Sizes of the right. So we can measure and we can see how tall they were for sure.
Culture.
Okay, in what way?
I saw a video like 2 years ago. When a man dies, they put his wife before him in the graveyard, and they put him above her.
Ah, okay.
After 1 week, they come and open the grave. If she's alive, she can live.
Yeah, still happens, right?
Right.
And
So-
African cultures.
Well, I guess if I walk it back a little bit, that sounds terrifying, actually. Different cultures have different burial practices, right? And so how they choose to bury their dead can tell us a little bit about their worldview, their belief system, their culture. Yeah, so whether people are buried alone or with other people, are they buried with people who are still alive? Are they buried with animals? Are they buried, in what position are they buried? Do we lie them down? Do we sit them up? Do we burn their bodies first?
For example, like the Vikings, I don't know if it's true or not, but if someone was famous and they died, some of the people, they choose to sacrifice themselves to die with them.
Yeah. So, and that can tell us a lot about a power, like the social stratification, right? The power structure in society. So we can learn a lot depending on who's in the grave, right? One person, multiple people, and why are they there?
Maybe pets also.
Oh yeah, pets can go in there as well sometimes. These three individuals are children, right? So maybe I wonder why they're in there.
Maybe if somebody dies from the family, everybody will.
Maybe, right? Maybe we could tell if they were intentionally killed, or maybe we can tell if they died of disease, right? We can look at their bones and tell how healthy they were, right? So sometimes, what's that?
Maybe eruption from a volcano.
Sure. Yeah. If you get buried by a volcano, then we can find them too. What?
They're in love. They're looking at each other.
Yeah, maybe, right? Maybe that has something to do with how people are placed in the grave might be important. Might be important as well, right? So we can tell, and if we do chemical analyses of the bone, we can tell a little bit about what people were eating, where they were moving in their environment. We can tell a little bit about how old they are, too, right? We can carbon date these bones and tell when these people died. That's useful too. So human burials can be really a wealth of knowledge. We can find out quite a few things, and let's face it, it's pretty neat, right? It's pretty neat to find these people and see how they were treating their dead, right? Do I have? Okay. Do you want to take a little break? Let's take a little break. Okay, little break. We'll come back in 10 and we'll talk about linguistic anthropology. Okay, so we're back, and we've been talking about a couple things. I asked you what a human was, and you gave me all sorts of very intelligent and very correct answers about kind of what humans are and how humans are different from other creatures. And I said, that's what anthropology is trying to understand. What are human beings, and how did we get to be what we are? And so we looked at biological anthropologists who look at sort of more of the physical body of what a human is. We're talking about archaeologists here who look at human behavior in the past by looking through what's left behind, right? And trying to figure out what humans were doing and how what they thought and what they believed and how they lived their lives, right? The third one is linguistic anthropology, and linguistic anthropology are anthropologists who are interested in language. And you mentioned that communicating through language is an important part of what human beings are. And it's a very complicated thing, right? All of us have languages that are very symbolic, right? And so why is this thing a table? Well, because we all agree it's a table. And so the word table and the sound table, those are both symbols for this thing, right? So we use our language is symbolic, right? Every word is a symbol for a concept or a thing or an action. And we put them together in very complicated ways. And to the degree that we can even talk about things that don't exist, right? We can talk about Harry Potter. And Harry Potter does not exist, nor does Hogwarts. I'm so sorry. Neither does Hogwarts, right? But we can have a full conversation about things that don't actually really exist, right? And so language is a really important part of it's an important part of the human experience and what humans do. And so some of the tools that linguistic anthropologists use to understand and describe human languages can also be used to create them as well. Anybody watch Game of Thrones? Just one? What's that? It's boring? It's not that boring? Okay. Either way, whether you're a fan or not, Game of Thrones, like a number of other movie or book franchises, has actually created its own languages for the program. And so Game of Thrones here hired a linguist to create 3 languages. And so there's a Dothraki language, there's a High Valyrian, and then is it Low Valyrian? Or just regular Valyrian? Or? Okay. There's at least there's at least 3 or maybe 4 languages that exist in this Game of Thrones world. And Game of Thrones hired a linguist to actually create these languages based on the way that real human languages work. And so they have actually created 3 or 4 brand new languages that work. They function as real languages. They don't have a vocabulary like all of ours do, because our languages have been developing over thousands of years, but they work. They operate like a real language, and they sound like a real language because they are. And again, they use the tools that linguists and linguistic anthropologists use in order to understand human language. And if you go on YouTube and you do a search for Game of Thrones language creation or something, you'll probably find a few videos that describe how they actually did it. And it's pretty interesting. If you know how human language works and you know how to describe it, you can pretty easily create your own language if you're into that sort of thing. Linguistic anthropologists also use these tools to kind of determine how human languages develop and evolve, because they do, right? They kind of develop through time and change. Sometimes they split off into different groups and kind of continue to change on their own. And so based on doing this, or based on their techniques for doing this, linguistic anthropologists have been able to figure out how languages are related to each other. And so the idea here is that linguistic anthropologists created a linguistic family tree, which you may not be able to read because A, it's quite small, and B, I'm going to have the bulb changed in here for tomorrow. But linguistic anthropologists created a tree like this based on similarities between languages. And so they can actually determine how languages evolved. And so here you can see that if you go far enough back, there is kind of a grandfather or grandmother, if you will, or a grandmother language to all of these existing languages. And they call it Proto-Indo-European. And so once upon a time, thousands and thousands of years ago, there was a language that existed that we're calling Proto-Indo-European. We don't really know quite what it was like. None of it is written down. It's very, very old. We don't know what it was like, really. But we know that it existed because it kind of gave birth to all of these different types of languages. And so here you can see there's kind of a Slavic branch of languages with Russian and Polish and Czech and things like that. There's a Baltic branch over there. There's Albanian and Armenian, which are over there. And then there's this Indo-Iranian branch. And so here we can see some languages that exist today, like Hindi and Bengali and Punjabi, and of course Iranian languages, Persian and Old Persian, and Kurdish. All of these are kind of related in predictable ways. And linguistic anthropologists have tools to be able to compare languages and see how closely they're related, and in some cases even estimate when they may have sort of diverged and become their own language. And so, as you might imagine, or as you might already know, the closer you are on this family tree, the more easily understandable another language would be to you, right? And the further apart you are, the more different the languages have become. And so when I was in my grad program, I was in the process of learning to speak Russian. And at I've forgotten most of it now, but when I knew the most Russian, I could understand a lot of Ukrainian. And actually, I could even understand a little bit of Polish. And so because those languages are so close together, they're more similar, right? I do not, even at my best Russian ability, I did not understand any Persian. Right? So they become more and more different, but this is one of the things that linguistic anthropologists are interested in, how languages appear and how they change through time. The last one is sociocultural anthropology, and this is the study of human culture. And usually what we try to do here is study cultures that are contemporary, meaning right now. We could actually go and visit these cultures and learn about them. And so this is kind of a branch of anthropology that's probably about, let's say 150 or 160 years old, give or take. In kind of the early 1900s, when anthropology was being born, and sociology was being born too as kind of a discipline, there was a group of anthropologists who believed in participant observation, they called it. And so prior to this, people would be interested in human cultures, and so they would read all of these journals by explorers and traders, and they'd say, oh, the people of North America must be like this, right? And so they would sit at home in their nice cushy chairs and talk about what other cultures were like. But closer to the beginning of the 1900s, there was kind of a new breed of anthropologist, and guess which one the anthropologist is? Yeah, it's an easy guess, right? The anthropologist here is Branislaw Malinowski, and Branislaw was one of this new breed of anthropologists who said, you can't understand cultures by sitting at home and reading books about what other people said. You have to get in there. And so here, Branislaw Malinowski actually went to the Trobriand Islands, famously, and they're a group of tiny islands that are just off the coast of New Guinea. And so he went there, he stayed there for a year or so. Actually, he was stuck there during the First World War, but that's another story. He went there and actually lived with these people. He lived with them, he made friends with them, he learned how to speak their language, He lived in their houses, he ate their food, and he asked them, hey, why do you believe what you believe? Why are you doing that thing? What does it mean when you say this? And so asked a lot of questions and eventually wrote a book describing the culture as he was able to perceive it. You can still read it if you want. It's called Argonauts of the West Pacific or Western Pacific. Interesting book. But yeah, he and this kind of new wave of anthropologists said, you can learn about human culture and study it and describe it, but you have to immerse yourself in it. You can't just read a book and explain what culture is like. You've got to be in there. You've got to experience it from the inside. And that's, to a great degree, that's what sociocultural anthropologists continue to do today. I don't know who this anthropologist is, unfortunately, but here she is kind of doing exactly what Branislaw Malinowski was doing, going to a culture that she wanted to learn more about and describe, learning the language and living with the people, right? And trying to understand their culture from their own perspective. Now, where are we here in terms of time? Okay, we got a lot of time left. Or do we? Yeah, we're 11:45, right? Weird, I had a little time thing there. So anthropologists are concerned with describing what humans are and what it means to be human. And one of the reasons, or one of the important things that we should remember here is that humans are strange creatures in that much of our behavior is not pre-programmed, right? So has anyone seen like a horse or a cow being born, even on TV? You don't have to see it in real life. What happens, right? The little horse comes out of mom in a kind of gross mess, right? You know, the placenta is kind of torn open, or the birthing sac is torn open, and then what's the little horse do? Yeah, he tries to stand up, right? And it's kind of shaky and cute, and mom is kind of helping him a little bit and licking all that gunk off him, right? And before you know it, the little horse is walking around, a little unsteady, but it's up, right? And then what does it do? It starts to eat, right? It starts to suckle from its mother. And the horse kind of the little baby horse knows how to do this, right? It's automatically kind of programmed to know what to do. But are human babies like this? No. Human babies are interesting because I kind of like to think of humans as, in a way, we're kind of like computers. But our bodies and our brains are kind of the hardware, and our culture is our software. Our culture is our operating system. Has anyone in this room ever seen a computer with no operating system installed yet? No OS 10 or no Windows? Yeah. What does the computer do?
Nothing.
It's like a cursor. Yeah, it doesn't know how to do anything, right? It just sits there, right? It has to be taught how to do stuff. And humans are like computers in this way anyway, in that when we're born, we have no operating system installed, right? We're kind of we're a mostly blank slate. We have a few things pre-wired into us, not a lot, but a few things are pre-wired, but we have to be taught, right? We need our operating system downloaded to us. And that's kind of what, that's what anthropologists that's what anthropologists describe as the process of enculturation, right? So we've all been through this process. We go through this process of being taught things, right? Being taught our culture, right? How to eat, how to shelter ourselves, how to dress, how to interact with the physical environment, how to interact with each other, right? We're taught this, and we're taught this over a very long period, right? It's a long enculturation process. Are we done in a year? No. 5 years? All done? 10 years? 15 years? still learning. 20 years, still learning, right? So it's a very long process of enculturation for humans. And that's actually one of the things that's different about humans as well, is that we have a very long childhood. So humans are basically helpless for, how long would you say?
Century.
Pretty close. Yeah, I would say totally helpless for at least 10 years. But after that, we still need care, right? We still need support. And so that's really weird for an animal too, to have such a long childhood. No animal has that. But for us, it's critically important because, again, we're kind of born half-baked, if you will. We've been taken out of the oven before we're fully cooked. And so we need to do a lot of growing and we need to do a lot of learning. And part of that learning is downloading our cultural software, being enculturated. And so the little progress bar takes 15, 20 years to download. And I would argue that we are continually learning, right? We're continually being enculturated, especially as culture continues to change, and especially if you go to another country where you're living in a new culture, right? You're kind of being partially enculturated by that new place as well. So this is kind of a lifelong process of learning how to do things and learning how to interact with other people. The other thing that we should remember from this too is that pretty much everything humans do is cultural. Okay, so I know that when we think of culture, we might think of food, right, or rituals, or art, or the way people dress, or maybe their language, or maybe their religion. But everything that humans do is cultural because almost everything humans do has been taught to them. Very little of it is biological. So, for instance, I got up this morning and I went into the bathroom, and what did I do? I brushed my teeth. Why did I do that? Well, because my culture has taught me to, right? My culture says that you have to take care of your teeth, you have to brush them, otherwise they will rot and fall out of your head, and that will be painful and gross. Also, if I have horrible breath, will people want to talk to me? No, they will not, right? I will be shunned. I will be socially shunned if I have a really bad breath and I don't brush my teeth. So I got up this morning and I brushed them, right? We wouldn't think of brushing one's teeth as a cultural act, but it is, right? And so really to be a human is to be a practitioner of culture. Everything you do and many of the things you think are cultural things, right? And because they've been taught to you, not because you are biologically programmed to do so, right? And that's another thing that makes humans so interesting. Where do you think these kind of beliefs and values come from? Like we're taught them, right? But where do they come from originally, would you say? How does a culture come to believe and know the things that it believes and knows?
By doing something that they took it as a habit and they made it as a rule.
Okay, so things that are kind of habitually done, right, become,
Depends on the history of the country.
right? So there's a historical factor too, right? And that's very true.
Religion.
Religion, right? Religion is a part of where ideas come from. That is true.
Trial and error. Experience.
Trial and error and experience in nature and nature, right? Yeah, all of those things are very important, right? The physical world around us can be a teacher, right? If we pay attention to it. And what's that?
Environment.
Yeah, the environment is an important determinant of our culture, but also trial and error, right? So what's the saying? Good judgment comes from bad experience, which comes from bad judgment, right? So yeah, we learn lessons, right? We make mistakes, and then hopefully we find better ways to do things, and then we pass those things on, right? Yeah, anthropologist here, Clifford Geertz, back in the 70s, sorry, he said that humans are incomplete or unfinished animals that complete themselves through culture, right? And so Clifford Geertz, even though he probably wasn't thinking of it, this is very much the computer and software analogy, right? Buying a computer is great, but if it's got no operating system, it's kind of unfinished, right? It doesn't do anything. You have to give it that knowledge so that it knows how to go on the internet and watch a video and check your email and things like that, right? It has to be taught how to do those things, just like humans do. So this is what we'll say culture is in terms of an official definition. We'll say that culture is a system, so it's got a bunch of different parts that work together. It's a system of shared beliefs, so these are things that we all have in common. Beliefs, values, customs, behaviors, and artifacts. Artifacts are physical objects, so any of the things that we're using here count as artifacts that are common to members of a society. That's what we'll say culture is. And there's a lot of aspects to culture, and I said, that often when we think about culture, we think about food or the way people dress or their language or their rituals, sometimes their religion or things that they do, but culture is actually a lot deeper than that. A lot of the things that we think about when we think about other cultures are really kind of just the surface level. And as you go deeper, you see there's all kinds of different ideas about how things should be done, right? So you can see here ideas of courtesy, of how to have a conversation, concept of time. Is time super important or not really? Is it important to be very punctual, or is time kind of, oh, things happen when they happen, inshallah, right? So different countries and cultures have different ideas about how time should work. Personal space. If you're going to, let's say you and I bump into each other, Baha and I bump into each other at the SkyTrain station and we have a little conversation. How far apart should we stand from each other?
No.
Yeah.
No, 2 meters.
2 meters. Oh yeah. Pre-COVID.
Maybe like 2 feet.
Yeah, maybe 2 feet or 3. Yeah, 3 feet, something like that. But that's kind of a cultural idea, right? We will kind of know how close to stand to each other, right? If let's say we're about a meter apart. Let's say we're 3 feet apart. Okay, and then I decide to take a step closer and I'm 2 feet apart. How are you going to feel?
Something is gonna happen.
Yeah, well, you feel like, whoa, like, well, what's going on here, right? Like, we need to have and probably what will happen is that you'll feel a little uncomfortable and you'll probably take a step back, right? Even without thinking about it, you're like, okay, that's a little close, right? If we meet on the SkyTrain platform there and we're talking and I'm like 3 meters away from you, pre-COVID, is that going to be weird too?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing all the way over there? Right? You're too far away. Why are you so far away, right? So that's just a tiny little example of culture. And it's interesting because we all kind of know the right distance, right? If you bumped into me at the SkyTrain station, you would kind of know the distance that's right, that's comfortable, right? And you would know that if I was standing too far away, I'd be like, why is he standing all the way over there, pre-COVID? And if I was too close, it'd be like, what is going on here, right? What's this? Why is this dude standing so close to me, right? So we have this idea about what's comfortable, right? If I meet you for the first time, oh, nice to meet you, Nicholas, and we shake hands, how long should we shake hands for?
2 seconds.
2 seconds? That sounds about right, right? Yeah. If I hold on for like 10 seconds, what are you going to be thinking?
You're still in my wallet.
Yeah, you're stealing my wallet. What is going on here, right? Why are you still holding my hand? Why is this handshake still happening, right? So again, but it's very interesting because has anyone taught you how long a handshake should be? No, you just kind of know.
You gained
What's that?
it. You gained it.
Yeah.
Watching other people.
Exactly, right? You've just kind of absorbed that cultural lesson by watching the behavior of other people and kind of moderating your own behavior. We kind of know these things without being taught, which is really interesting, right? And again, sorry, the handshake thing is interesting if you watch Donald Trump shake hands because he has no, yeah, like he seems to have no conception of how to do it, right? He like pulls people off of their, off balance, or he's like pulling them around, or he's hanging on for like way too long. And it's like, what planet are you from, right? But again, there are very clear social rules, and we've absorbed these things, right? The other thing to point out here is there's a lot of different aspects of culture, and this, of course, is just, a very short summary. As you go deeper, some of these are kind of more tightly held, and they have more of an emotional investment, right? And so when rules are broken or when ideas are challenged, people have a stronger emotional reaction to them, the kind of deeper you go. So, if I bump into somebody on the SkyTrain station and I stand a little too close, it's like, okay, dude, back off a bit, right? You have a little bit of a reaction. But if you look at some of these other ones here in terms of the concept of self, or what things are obscene or what things aren't obscene, people will have a stronger reaction to those, right? Let's see here, what do I have next? Oh, the other thing we should remember is culture is a tool, right? So, and it's probably the most important tool that humans have, right? Teaches us how to interact with each other, teaches us how to interact with the environment and find the things that we need: food, shelter, belonging, protection. All of those things culture teaches us how to do. Because as I pointed out earlier, we don't really have a lot of those things going for us, right? We don't have big teeth, we don't have claws, we're not that strong in comparison to other animals. We're kind of weak. So culture is a very important adaptation for us. Why do you think we have culture at all? And I think the question I want to ask you here more specifically is, why is it important for us to share this set of beliefs and values and customs? Why can't everyone just believe what they want? Why do we want to share a common culture? Or why is it useful to share a common culture?
This is all gain experience. Second of all, like differentiate between right and wrong.
Okay, what was the first one?
Gain experience.
Okay, how so?
So like if I'm doing something, let's say as I told I'm a mechanic, I'm fixing a car.
Right.
So other person, what he's doing is an open hood and engine. So first of all, he's gonna come. What you're doing? Ask. Then if I see him again, oh, what are you doing? Then if I get asked, oh, I saw that guy doing this thing, that means this is right.
Okay, so that might be the answer to a different question. Maybe let me ask it. Maybe let me ask it a different way. Okay, so we had a custom here pre-COVID that when you meet someone, you shake their hand and you usually say hello or hi. Sometimes you introduce yourself. Why is it kind of important that we all do that?
Because it can make you feel like you belong somewhere.
Okay, so it gives us a sense of belonging, right? Yeah.
We have a need of community.
What's that?
We have like a need of community.
We have a need of community. Humans want to feel like they're part of something,
Yeah.
like they're part of a
They have
group.
to feel like they belong somewhere and they have some people around them.
Yeah. So it makes us feel kind of comfortable. It makes us feel like we're one of the group. What else does it do? What?
Who are essential.
That we're essential?
Like, yeah, to the community.
Sure, yeah. It makes us feel like we're a valued member, right? It validates us, I guess, if you will. Why else is that useful?
It will be motivated.
Sorry, one sec. What did you say? Yeah, and why is it important to follow those kinds of polite rules? What's the benefit of that? Is there a
So
feeling?
it's like now we took it as a habit.
Yeah.
You don't act like you like to me. I won't like come close to you or talk to you or get
Oh,
attention.
so if I don't kind of follow the appropriate customs, you might not want to talk to me or come close to me. Well, why not?
Because you're doing something weird I don't accept or I don't handle.
Yeah.
So I must stay away from you.
Right. So
Want
I
respect.
yeah. So if I'm doing something weird or I'm not following the rules, you might not trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I consider you as one of my people.
Right. Right. So following the rules helps to build trust, right? There's a story about, I don't know if this is true or not, but there's a story that the handshake developed because if you shook someone's hand, you would know that they didn't have a knife and they weren't going to like stab you, right? So if you got close to someone without shaking their hand, they might like, stab you and take your money or something like that. I don't know if I don't know if it's true or not, but the story is that, you know, the handshake was like, nice to meet you, and you can see I don't have a knife, right? I'm not going to stab you, I come in peace.
Also, it's a way like to express that I'm approaching you for something useful. As you said, not gonna harm you.
Yeah.
Also, like if two people are looking, as you said, 3 meters apart, where he's looking at you.
Yeah.
If you come and say shake hands, okay, you want maybe to meet, introduce yourself,
Yeah.
ask about something.
Right. And those things are important, right? And why would you say that they're important? Why are they so important for us to feel like members of a group, to feel validated, to feel safe, to feel like you can trust other people?
Motivated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a better community.
Oh, okay, to make a better community. Yeah, to make a better community, because what did we say about humans before? Yeah, we have a need of community, and we're social animals, right? We don't survive. We don't survive on our own. We survive in groups, and so we actually have to learn how to cooperate as a group. Yeah, and this is something that's important about humans too, that we probably didn't mention earlier, is that humans are unique because of the way they cooperate. We're unique because we can cooperate flexibly and we can cooperate in large numbers. And this is something that really no other animal can do, right? So if you look at, let's say, a pack of wolves or a pack of orcas, of those killer whale things that you see, they can cooperate in a very flexible way, right? So wolves have kind of a hierarchy, right? In the pack, there's an alpha wolf who's kind of in charge, and all the other wolves kind of fight it out and determine where they are in the social structure. You could be the alpha wolf and then you could fall and another alpha wolf could take your place. That's kind of a flexible social structure, right? And they can be flexible when they hunt too, right? They can go off on the hunt and they can ambush an animal, or, you know, if the animal goes a different way, the wolves can kind of change their plan. They cooperate in a very flexible way, wolves do. But they can't really do it in large numbers. And what you find is that the problem is that wolves can't keep that much social information in their brain. And so when the pack gets to about 20 or 25 animals, you find that it's too many wolves and they can't keep track of who's on top and who's on they get confused. There's too many wolves. And so often if the pack gets that big, they will split into two smaller packs because they're able to kind of keep track of who's on top and who's who they trust and who they don't, right? On the other hand, there's animals that can cooperate in large numbers, right? So bees in a beehive. There could be thousands and thousands of bees, and they're all cooperating to create the hive and create little baby larvas and honey and take care of the queen and all this stuff. And different bees have different jobs. And so they cooperate in thousands, right? Being able to do what they do. But can they cooperate in a flexible way? Not really, right? If you're a worker bee, can you like work really hard at night school and eventually become the queen? No, right? If the queen is really, if nobody likes the queen, can the bees get together and overthrow the queen and create a bee democracy with bee elections and votes? No, right? Bees kind of only know how to cooperate in one way, but they can do it in large numbers. But humans, humans can do both of these things, right? Look at this college, for instance. This college is an excellent example of humans cooperating flexibly and in large numbers. How many people do you think participate in the operation of this college? Everyone that's in here. Do you know how many that is? It is, well, in the building doesn't, COVID. Pre-COVID, there was probably about 22 or 2,400 students, and there's probably about 200 staff members. So let's say 2,500 people, okay? 2,500 people are just in this college are cooperating, right? And so people are coming here, the building operates, the lights are on because somebody's paying the power bill. There is education that is being offered. The classes all add up to a degree. There are students here, and you're all here getting the degree and the classes that you want. I'm a teacher here, and I'm providing that education to you. I'm getting a paycheck, which I really like. And so everybody is kind of cooperating to get what they need, right? And that's not even a big group of humans, right? Think about Canada. In Canada, there's 36 million human beings who are cooperating to make this country run, right? And again, we're not all doing the same thing. We don't all have the same values or beliefs, but cooperating together. And no other animal can do anything like that. Again, they can cooperate in very predictable ways, like bees, or they can cooperate in flexible ways, like whales or wolves, but no animal can really do those things at the same time, and humans can. And that's a huge advantage for us, huge advantage. I guarantee you if you put 2,000 chimpanzees in this building, you won't see cooperation. You'll see complete insanity, right? It will be, if you'll pardon the pun, it will be bananas. Yeah, they'll destroy everything, they'll fight, they'll kill a bunch of each other. It'll be bad, bad news, right? So yeah, this is one of the keys to our success as a species, that we can cooperate in a very flexible way and in very large numbers, right? That's a huge strength for us. We said a little bit earlier that our beliefs come from religion, they come from historical experience, right? What a culture has gone through. They also come from the environment, right? So if you imagine a culture that kind of develops in a desert is going to have a very different experience than a culture that develops in the jungle, or that develops in the Arctic, or that develops on the coast, or that develops in the flat plains, right? Those are totally different places to live. And so cultures will be influenced by the place that they first appear. And they'll be influenced by a number of other things too, but we'll get to that. The last thing here that I'll say maybe today is that Clifford Geertz says that we kind of create these beliefs and values because humans also desire meaning, right? We want to know what things mean and why things happen, right? So when it rained yesterday, my cat looked out the window and watched the rain, right? Do you think she wondered, how is it that its water is falling from the sky? Do you think she wondered? No, she just watched the rain. It's kind of an attractively simple way to live your life. But humans want to know, right? Humans want to know, what does this mean? Why is water falling from the sky, right? Why is it light out now when it was dark hours before? What was that about, right? Some person is looking at me with a particular expression on their face. What does that mean, right? Humans always want to know what things mean, right? Humans want to know why. And of course, if you've been around a young child, as soon as they're kind of old enough to start saying words, what question do they ask? Why? Why? Right? Why is it dark out? Well, because the sun is gone. Why? Well, because sometimes the sun has to go to bed because it's tired. Why? Right? And it makes you want to shoot yourself after a while, but that's pretty clear evidence that humans do want to know that, right? Humans want to know why. And so to be a human is to be a maker of meaning, right? We want to know why. We want to know what things mean. We want to know, why does water fall from the sky? Is it the rain god? Is God crying? Is it condensation and precipitation? Humans want to know, right? And so this is another important part of what it is to be human, is that need to explain the world around us, right? My cat does not have that need. She doesn't need to explain the world around her. She simply experiences it. But me and all of us, we want to know why, right? Okay, I think I'm going to pause there. Do you have any questions, or is there anything that you'd like to say or address, or something we might have missed that we should clear up? I feel like my voice is just about finished for today. It'll get stronger by next week, but I can definitely feel it. Huh? You what?
No comment.
Don't call you?
No comment.
No comment. Okay. Okay. So maybe that's where I will leave it for today then. Come back tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more about culture, and then something else, but I forget what's next. We'll find out. It'll be a surprise for both of us. Okay, that is all for today. Go. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you tomorrow.